there's a number at which any more than that. So, but it's yeah, he did the cut.
Hello.
Snack people. What side do we sit on if we're supporting data centers? I'm just kidding.
Outside?
Yeah, outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Session that we got the commission.
Don't worry. Be happy. Don't.
Well, the problem is he's the main thing. So one thing you can do try to do is to something with the water. And then if everything is crap, then you can go after that.
Welcome to beautiful Two Wishes Ranch. We're very excited to be here today. If you could please find your seats, we would greatly appreciate to get started as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Looks like there's a few seats up close if anybody's brave enough to occupy a seat close to the front. And we're going to get rolling. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are the Lockhart Lowdown. We have the community radio show. In Lockhart. This is Levi Garrett. I'm Len Gabay. We host the Lockhart Lowdown. Radio's local, and that's exactly what we're about. Real conversations, real issues, right here, well, next door in Lockhart and here in Caldwell County.
Wow.
Well, we heard that. All right. Thank you. You good? All right. So if you haven't listened to the Lockhart, well, let's just have a show of hands who's listened to the Lockhart Lowdown. All right.
Thank you.
If you haven't, Thursdays from 5 to 6, except for this Thursday. But klkt.org, 107.9 FM. So we weren't asked to moderate this afternoon because we're technical experts in data centers, energy systems, or water infrastructure. But because we know how to guide conversations that help people understand complex issues.
And this is certainly a complex issue. There are many technical layers to what we're going to be discussing: water systems, cooling methods, grid capacity, regulatory structures, and we certainly want to be upfront with you. Again, this isn't something that we deal with on a daily basis, which is why we are here to ask clear questions. We're here to keep the conversation grounded, and we certainly want to help surface what is actually true about what's happening in our community, and what is actually actionable based on these developments.
And because in conversations like this, it's easy to get terms mixed up, numbers to be used in different ways, which we've all heard back and forth, and for people to talk past each other. So part of our role here today is to slow things down, clarify definitions, and make sure we're talking about the same things.
There's also a very important distinction that we'll be exploring this afternoon. There is a difference between opposing something and having the power to shape its outcome. We certainly want that to be the case here today. And part of what we'll be doing is understanding where that influence actually lives and how it can be used effectively. Again, we're going to be looking at issues through a few different lenses, including water, energy, economics, and governance, because no single piece tells the whole story of what this means for our community.
For example, when we talk about water, context matters. According to a Texas Monthly article, Texas loses on the order of 186 billion gallons of water each year through leaking infrastructure alone. Now, the 2026 State Water Plan, now in development, will for the first time consider the water saved by fixing leaks to be a distinct source of water that's already in our communities. Now, that doesn't dismiss concerns, right? But it reminds us that we're dealing with a system and not just a single issue. So before we begin today, we want to set a few expectations for how Levi and I will run the show today. Questions, when we have the question and answer questions from the audience, the questions should be questions, not speeches, please. We'll keep things respectful and focused on issues, not individuals. And we may step in to keep things moving so more voices can be heard. And if we can hold to that, this can be a really valuable conversation. So please help us keep things moving and especially respectful today.
Before we get into our panel discussion, we definitely want to take a moment to recognize the folks that have made this happen. Obviously, Caldwell DCAT, much appreciation, along with Two Wishes Ranch for providing this beautiful venue on a beautiful day. We also want to recognize one sponsor in particular, the Caldwell Hayes Examiner. They've been a strong supporter of community conversations like this one, and we appreciate them being a part of making this afternoon possible. Christine is here, and we'd like to turn it over to Christine quickly for a word about the May issue of the Caldwell Hayes Examiner. Christine? Christine?
Christine is not here.
I saw some representation from Caldwell Hayes Examiner. In any event,
Check out the May issue.
they apparently have a May issue coming with more information on data centers within our community.
So we also want to take a moment and thank DCAT, the Caldwell Data Action Center team, and Pat Stroka for putting this together, and to Lane Tanner. Thanks so much for the mics. We really appreciate it. You know, a lot goes into making an event like this happen, and it's all volunteer, obviously, and you know, we appreciate the work that went into making this happen.
Okay, before we introduce our panel, we also want to note that State Representative Stan Gertis and State Senator Judith Zaffirini were invited to join us today because many of these decisions that ultimately shape this issue, particularly around energy and regulation, are decisions that are made at the state level. Neither one of them were able to join us this afternoon, but we did want to take time to acknowledge the outreach and also to let you know that we do have a legislative aide from Senator Zaffarini's office here today, Gary Strong. Thank you for being here. Appreciate the effort in attending and look forward to continuing this conversation with your office.
So the Caldwell County Data Action Team brought together a range of perspectives on our panel for this town hall. We've got energy, agriculture, environmental advocacy, law, and local government. So I want to introduce the panel. First, we have the Honorable Judge Hoppy Hayden here. Judge Hayden has served as county judge here in Caldwell County since 2019. He's a longtime resident of Caldwell County, a small business owner, and a hardworking rancher, and is focused on fiscal responsibility, infrastructure, and core county services during his time in office.
We're also joined by Bobby Levinsky. Thank you. Bobby is an environmental law attorney with the Save Our Springs Alliance who brings a legal perspective on environmental and regulatory issues to the panel today.
Next, we have Clayton Tucker. And Clayton is the Democratic nominee for Texas Ag Commissioner. He comes from a multi-generational farming family and grew up working on his family's ranch in Lampasas. He's worked as a water researcher with the National Science Foundation and is currently Secretary of Texas Farmers Union.
Next, we have Virginia Parker. Virginia Parker is Executive Director of the San Marcos River Foundation and has been involved with the organization for many years, including serving as Vice President of its board. She has a background in environmental work and disaster response and has been active in efforts to protect the river and surrounding communities. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Dee Dee Belmars. Dee Dee is a clean energy advocate with Public Citizen Texas. She works on community-driven solutions to help vulnerable communities respond to extreme weather events. She was born and raised on the south side of San Antonio, where she developed an early focus on conservation. We appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into it. First question, Judge Hayden, I'm going to start with you. In workshops and in hearings, we've talked and heard a lot about what cannot be controlled at the county level. So I want to jump over that and let's move straight to outcomes. If a data center project moves forward, what are the specific tangible benefits you and the Commissioner's Court can deliver to Caldwell County? And why do those count as real benefits for residents?
Thank you, Dan. And thank you to everybody that sponsored. Thank you all for coming. To get to that answer, I need to explain how we get to that answer. When these developments on this map right here show up in my office, they have already purchased that land. They own it. They didn't ask permission to be here. They didn't come to us and ask to be here. So they come to us and say, we'd like a tax abatement. Very first thing out of their mouth, every single time. We say we won't even have that conversation with you without doing a development agreement first. The reason for getting into a development agreement is that statutorily, and not many people know this, but counties have zero zoning authority, none. Absolutely zero. We do have the authority to look at their engineering plans and look at their drainage on their site. We have the authority to issue a driveway permit, and we have the authority to issue a septic tank permit. And outside of the development agreement, that is literally all the authority that any county in the state of Texas has. So you can see the position that puts us in. So what we do is we get them into a development agreement situation in exchange for a tax abatement. The development agreement has things in it like we tell them that you must use a closed loop system, not only in your data center, but in your power generation systems. We require you to do low use power generation on water. We tell them you have to remove 80% of the total suspended solids out of your water before it comes off the site. We tell them that you have to attain 5.5, 2.5, 0.5 standards if you're going to treat the water and discharge it to our creeks. We tell them you have to use dark sky lighting, and the list goes on and on. We ask them for everything we can ask. Pardon? Oh yeah. Commissioner Terrio just told me, and this is probably most important, on a 100 megawatt data center, it takes about 100,000 gallons to fill that closed loop. And we require that they use non-potable water to fill that loop. And then the regulation that we put on the amount of water that they can use is 200 gallons per megawatt per month. So in other words, they're allowed to use 100 megawatt data center is allowed to use 20,000 gallons. That sounds like a lot, but if you compare that to homes, that's just a handful of homes a month. So that's the benefits that we pursue when we're talking to these guys. The other thing we do is we get, in exchange for the abatement, we also, I don't know why I'm getting so much feedback, we also ask for what's called a pilot payment. That stands for payment in lieu of taxes. And so if we give them 100% abatement, we say, Mr. Data Center Developer, you're going to write us a check back every year for half of that and give us a development agreement. And we're probably one of the few counties that are dealing with these development centers that are doing all of these things. And it's partially because of collaboration with Virginia and our experience. My background, I was lab director for Guadalupe Blanco River Authority. I was program manager for the lab at the LCRA, and I owned a series of labs along with two partners for 10 years, environmental labs, where we did water quality work in addition to waste characterization for refineries. So and I also owned a stormwater consulting business during that time. And so water quality is near and dear to my heart, and we are doing everything we can to hold these guys accountable. And as Lynn alluded to, we're also going to be trying to push some legislation through to give counties more water authority than we have right now in the next session. And we're asking Senator Gerdes, Senator Zaffarini, and Senator Zerweiner to carry that bill for us. And I think we've got support from all three. So we're not sitting idly by. We are very frustrated with what's going on, just frustrated as you are, and we're doing everything in our power to stop it and to regulate, not stop it, but to regulate it. We can't stop it.
I do want to ask you, Judge Hayden, so with the money that is coming in, what can be done with that money to help save farmland in Caldwell County?
So, I mean, this is some pretty serious money that we're talking about. So the two people that we've spoken to about these abatements and development agreements so far, their money back to us will be somewhere in the neighborhood between $14 million and $20 million a year. If we get that kind of money back, then the county could go and buy some farmland and put it in a land conservancy or donate it to the Luling Foundation in Luling and lease back to farmers. Right now, we frankly don't have the funds to do that. We barely do the 22 services that we have to do. But that funding could be used to go in and purchase some of this land that's being sold at $80,000 per acre and put it in a conservancy.
Judge, I believe there's likely someone sitting to your left who may, like what he's hearing when it comes to saving those lands.
And honestly, frankly, we'd love to see the legislature help us out a little bit there too.
And that was going to be my next point and question to you, Judge. We've heard you speak about engaging with the legislature, especially around local authority. Given that so much of this ultimately sits at the state level, it raises a broader question for the panel as a whole. How should communities think about influencing decisions when the primary authority doesn't necessarily sit locally?
So, last session I was telling Virginia, I literally spent more time at the state capitol than I did in my office in Caldwell County, fighting some of these local bills. It's well known in this county that I've run as a Republican, but Paul Betancourt, I'm going to tell you their names. Senator Betancourt sits on the Senate local committee. The first. Is there another mic? Hello? Okay, I think this mic's got a little short in it. So when you go to testify in a committee hearing, there are kiosks outside. You sign up at the kiosk to speak, you say why you're there, who you are, where you're from. And so I sat in that committee hearing all day for 14 hours, waiting for my bill to come up. When my bill came up, everybody was called up there to speak but me, and Senator Betancourt said, "Is that everybody?" And the aide said, "Yes." And he whacked the gavel and moved to the next bill. As you can imagine, after 14 hours, I was a little pissed off.
Well, you didn't have a good monitor.
So I approached the aide that told me to sign up at the kiosk, and he said to me, "Today, Senator Betancourt has decided that only written cards will be accepted to testify." I was the only local official there to testify, and I was the only one that wasn't told I had to fill out a written card. So I wasn't too happy. I will tell you that a room full of county judges makes way less impact on your elected officials at the state than a room full of you. But what that means is we find out about these committee hearings, if we're lucky, the day before. So you have to be willing to take off work, get there at 8, because they start calling the bills at 8 a.m. You have to be willing to sit there sometimes till 1 or 2 in the morning. That is tough. Senator Zaffarini, 3 sessions ago, Senator Zaffarini sponsored a bill for us. If you'll recall, if you've lived here long enough, more than 6 years, our county was being absolutely overrun with these kind of shady fly-by-night developers that were going around buying up 100 and 200 acre tracts of land, chopping them up into 11-acre parcels and selling them for contract for deed. Contract for deed is the most predatory financing vehicle known to man. If you're here and you have bad credit or you can't go to the bank for some reason, you go to a contract for deed developer, you finance your project at 12% interest when the going rate's 5 or 6. You miss one payment, they repossess your land and kick you off of it and sell it to the next guy. That was going on here and it was rampant. So we put together a bill. Senator Zaffarini sponsored it for us. We pushed that bill through. We got, it went through the Senate to the House, back to the Senate, and the night, this is getting towards the end of session, the night before the vote, Lieutenant Governor Patrick informed them that they were out of time and they would each get one bill. Well, guess whose bill got the axe? So I find this out at 11 o'clock at night. It was Senator Eckhart's freshman year in the Senate. I have a relationship with her, so I called Senator Eckhart at 11 and said, do you have a bill? And she said no, and I said, well, you do now. So we got that bill pushed through that night with cooperation from Senator Zaffarini and Senator Eckhart's office. It then went to the governor's office where it was up to be vetoed, and at the time our state senator, John Cyrier, got involved and helped keep the veto from happening, and it passed and it is now law here. So that's the kind of fight we're going to be in for on any legislation that we push through this session, and we are going to do it. And I'll put on my suit and tie, which I absolutely hate doing. You can probably tell by looking at me I'm not a tie guy. And I'll go sit up there and do my 12 or 14 hours every day until I get it done, or until it doesn't make it out of committee or it doesn't get off the floor in one of the chambers. But we're willing to do that, and we're asking you, if you have the time, we're going to have it on the website when those hearings come up. Please check it every day. There'll be a link. Click the link. And if you have time, please come up, sign up, and testify. You get 3 minutes. You have to be civil.
And we're actually going to talk about that in a second too.
Okay.
But Bobby, I'm wondering if you can talk to this group, because this is the community. This is Caldwell County here. From the legal perspective, right? What can these folks? What can we do? As I don't know how many people are here, maybe 200 or more. There are so many people here that can, get the word out, put the bat signal up that says, hey, we need you Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. at the Texas legislature. Take your day and get there, because this is important. From your perspective and your experience, and everyone else, Virginia as well, Clayton, Dee Dee, how can the people in this room better organize to make an effort so that the Stan Gertises of the world and the Judith Zaffarinis and Senator Eckhart and so on will actually start listening? Because it seems as though if we make their political survival dependent on getting involved in these issues in a way that we all want them to get involved, if their political survival doesn't depend on it, they may not be there.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Bobby Levinsky, I'm an attorney with the Save Our Springs Alliance. I'm also a member of the Data Center Action Coalition in San Marcos, who helped organize the fight against a few of the data centers in San Marcos, but recently the one that was denied for the zoning case, if you are familiar with that one. So I preface that because I'm more in the here and now, and I do recognize we need some legislative changes, absolutely. And I would guarantee, if you see that the number in this room, there are 200 roomfuls of people across the state right now doing the same thing, because all across the state we're in this fight together, and we just got to start connecting with one another, and we need to make noise. Delay right now is our friend. I'm not going to be shy about that. If there's an opportunity to obstruct one of these data centers, we need to be taking it, because what's in front of us right now is insurmountable. We're at an inflection point that our state will not be able to sustain if we don't take action. And it's not easy to say, well, this is what you got to do to sue on any particular one, because one, they're all so different. Two, the state legislature for the last decade or so has been stripping away authority after authority for us to be able to mount these fights. And so yes, we do need more tools at the state level, but we also don't need to be making the lives easier for these data center developers. One of the major things I think everybody in this room could do that could make a real powerful statement for the legislature submit a public information request, individually, each one of you. Submit a public information request to the water suppliers that are providing the water to these data centers and their power plants, and demand the information. Right now, they are withholding their projected water demands under national security concerns or proprietary interests. The state constitution guarantees the public the right to water. It is a public right, and it is a duty to the Texas legislature to uphold that right. And right now they aren't doing it, so we need to do everything we can to make noise around that. And I think if every single one of you were to submit a letter and then they had to respond to it, and the AG's office was having to respond to each one of these letters, it would make that type of noise. That's the type of action that we need to be doing right now. And it's also lawsuits. So, reach out to lawyers that want to volunteer for this. We need more lawyers in this fight. We need more people willing to take on each individual data center collectively. And it's not just one of us, it's all of us across the state. If you have friends across the state, get them connected. Let's all get in a group together and let's make some noise.
Quick note from the audience. We're going to turn this into a bit more of a performance and ask y'all to stand when you're speaking, just for the people in the back who can't see. So thank you.
You can't hear.
Lane, can we,
You're gonna get more feedback if I clean it up. We can talk louder.
Yep.
Talk louder.
It's a good note.
Maybe we can point the speakers out a little more. I can hear myself, so perhaps we can point them that way. Maybe we can, there we go. Yeah, we're trying, is that better? I was holding it away from my mouth earlier because there was a lot of feedback, but it seems to be much better, so we'll speak up.
I do have one follow-up question, Bobby, and a FOIA request or a Texas Public Information Act request is going to jam the system, the folks that are on the ground that are processing those requests. Is that the idea? Because that's costly, and if, when you said delay is on our side, there's delay in the sense of data centers getting built, but then there's also an urgency for the state legislature to act and to hear what we're all saying. So, delay is a double-edged sword that may not help everybody's concerns in the room.
Well, can you hear me? Yes. Well, there's two parts to that question.
If you can stand,
Yeah.
that would
So
be
there's
great.
two parts to that question. The first one is, what is the cost of a public information request? And I get that it would cause some administrative burden, but the point is that these data centers are costing us more without having access to the information about the water that they're using and being able to respond as a community to address that water usage, that water waste. I guess I'm not as convinced that the administrative burden is higher than the right to public access to our most precious environmental resource. The second part of that question is a delay for the sake of delay, and that's not what I'm trying to say here. I will agree with the premise: pollution delayed is pollution denied, but the point about delay right now is our water planning across the state does not take into account the projected demands from these data centers. And so it's not just delay for the sake of delay, it's delay so we can get the proper planning in place, so we can address the demands that are on our systems and on our water resources. I agree that if there's administrative burdens that are caused by a bunch of public information requests, maybe that's a flag to the Texas legislature that they've set up a system that doesn't work for us.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was a, let's say they blanket this, NSA national security concern on a FOIA request, that then would go to the Attorney General for an Attorney General's opinion, correct?
Yeah, let me give you an example about what happened. So Abigail Lindsay's here. She is a great advocate out of Hayes County. She is a neighbor to the Cloudburst facility. That's on your map right here, right next to the Palomino Alpha facility. Both of us have requested public information requests with Crystal Clear Water Supply Corporation. Crystal Clear had no problem giving over that information. What the state legislature set up was, if you request information about an application that reveals third-party information, that third party gets notice. Cloudburst was the one that objected to the release of the information. The private entity, not the governmental body. So they're the ones that raised the Homeland Security issue. They're the ones that raised the trade secrets issue. It's not the government, not the governmental body. And so what we got back from the AG's office after they agreed, based off what the state legislature has set up in their statutes, they agreed with Cloudburst, and what they gave back to us was akin to the Epstein files of a public information release. It was an entire blacked out pages of information, just page after page of just blacked out material, not revealing their projected water use for both their on-site water usage, which gets a lot of the current conversation, and then also their projected water uses for their power plant, which is an enormous amount of water that they still today refuse to give over, despite just entering into one of those development agreements and tax abate agreements with Guadalupe County. So we've entered agreements with them without even knowing how much water that they're going to use.
Thank you very much for that.
Bob, I'd like to say something to that too, because what he just said is important. That is why in our development agreements, we're putting a quantifiable number on them with severe clawbacks if they fail to meet them. And so that is something that has to get out there. When we do these agreements, it can't just be you have to use closed loop. It has to be you have to use closed loop and you can only use so much water. If you don't, you will be penalized severely.
Thank you, Judge. We are going to talk specifically more about water here shortly, but I do want to see if Dee Dee, Virginia, or Clayton have any general opening statements before we dive into specific topics. Dee Dee.
Go ahead. Can y'all hear me? So I just want to say Caldwell County is doing a much better job than Guadalupe County in getting protective measures for the residents. Overall, it sucks that they can't stop this industry that really none of us want. And so the number one thing we all have to do that is not an immediate action, but it's a very necessary action, is we have to vote differently at the state level. We've got to vote for people that believe in landowner rights, not developer rights. So that's the first long-term goal. The first short-term goal that I would add to what's already been said, and everything thus far has been amazing. So the Texas Water Development Board right now has y'all can all comment on the existing state water plan. And the state water plan is not taking into account data centers. And let me just give y'all an example. We're all worried about the water that's used on site at each facility. First of all, that water needs to be treated wastewater, not potable, precious potable water that's in such demand right now. So treated wastewater for these on-site locations. But second of all, the bigger user is the water that will be needed to cool the power. that too should be treated wastewater. So when you have the opportunity, go look for the Texas Water Development Board State Water Plan and make a lot of comments about we need local solutions, and treated wastewater is the quickest way that we can save potable water and our groundwater so that our wells quit going dry. I mean, granted, we're in a horrific drought, and we're gonna be in another horrific drought at some point. So let's use wastewater for these on-site data centers and also power plants. So I would just add those two things. That
Thank you.
Oh, Dee Dee, please stand up.
Oh, that's funny. I want to go back to one of the first questions about what people can do in light of a legislative session not happening for another 8 months. I think what people need to do, like so many people throughout the state of Texas, there is not a place in Texas where there are data centers or there are data centers getting ready to be developed where the community is not pushing back. Nobody wants these, nobody likes these. And it's because of the groups in San Marcos, out in El Paso, Round Rock, Taylor, Abilene, all over the state, people are pushing back and they're not accepting this, that there's nothing that their local officials cannot do. I think the judge did a pretty good job of saying there are things we want to do here. There are things that we can do here, but there's also things that they can do more, like community benefits agreements. It's not enough to just say use a closed loop system for the water usage, because these data centers also have backup generation that are diesel powered. They are gas powered. And these things have a serious impacts on health, and they have serious impact on the environment. So please just keep on pushing back on this. We can't do anything until January. Thank you.
Howdy. Can folks back there hear me all right? I raise goats, I yell a lot. So, you know what? I really feel like history may not repeat, but it certainly rhymes. Because I think back to this story I actually read about real recent. So there was a big bubble on wheat of all things in the 1910s, where everyone wanted to buy wheat. You could get like wheat for $4 a bushel, which, 1910 money, that was a lot. Look, this mic is being funny. Anyway, so they destroyed their water, they destroyed their soil out in the Texas Panhandle, and then bubbles do what bubbles do, they burst. And then a drought hit, and that's actually what started the Dust Bowl. That's how it started. And I want to be clear, my opinion is that AI is a bubble. It is a bubble that is the size of 9 Manhattan projects or 2 Apollo programs. That's how big this bubble is. It's about 3 or 4 corporations using a whole bunch of shell companies trading money back and forth with each other. And they are taking our water, they are taking our land, their noise is harming people, it's also harming livestock, which I will talk about, I think, a little bit more about how this has been affecting livestock. And there's a couple points that some of the other panelists did a really good job of talking about. I want to talk about delay, and I want to talk about water. Let's talk about delay. Delaying these folks is stopping these folks. To create the GPUs necessary for these data centers, you have to have helium. You just have to. It's a critical mineral or material. And there's 2 places in the world that produce a lot of helium, Texas and Qatar. Qatar got bombed, and even if the strait opened up today, it is a solid 6 months being incredibly optimistic they get their supply chains back. These big tech folks are they're about to not have the GPUs or the semiconductors or anything to build any of these data centers. We're already seeing 50% of the data centers being paused or delayed. To delay them is to stop them. And let's talk about water. I have a slight disagreement with a lot of our framing here. I definitely agree that we need to be careful with our water. I want these data centers using 0 of our water, because I was talking to a guy down in Houston. He works at one of the universities down there. Their data centers are water-free. No water. Not a drop of water in that data center. They use a plant-based oil, something maybe our farmers could grow here locally. That is the technology we need to be forcing these folks to use if they're coming here at all. No water for any data center. Lastly, I do want to talk a little bit about the state of politics. Probably a dangerous topic for me. But when the federal and the state government fail us, as they currently are, it is going to be take action like this to delay these folks. What y'all are doing, being here, learning about these issues, signing up to, do the public comments, to do the information request, signing up to do any of that, supporting campaigns, regardless of whether they are left or right, red or blue, but any of the campaigns that are against these things, that local action is how we, at the end of the day, let me put it this way, at the end of the day, the only people who are going to truly save our backyards are ourselves. So this action is essential to saving our Texas.
If I could just add one thing, we are holding them to 0 use for their cooling and their system, but we can't ask them not to flush a toilet or wash their hands. Okay, so when we're talking about 200 gallons per megawatt per month, we're talking about that kind of water.
And that's a conversation about usage versus consumption within a facility, which I highly encourage folks to dive into on your own time. We've talked a lot about water, and we'd like to move on to energy, but first, quick follow-up there. What was the name of that company in Houston using no water?
It was either University of Houston or Rice University. It's at one of the universities. I would have to talk to my buddy again.
No, that's good. I just think it's probably going to be something folks want to look into.
Yeah, we'll try to find out. Right. I owe that guy a phone call anyway.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to shift to talk about energy and SB6, including infrastructure. So at the state level, Senate Bill 6 is essentially Texas saying to large users, i.e. 75 megawatts or more, quote, you need to pay your own way when it comes to the electric grid. From panel's perspective, does SB 6 actually accomplish that? Or are there still ways costs could shift to the public?
Senate Bill 6 does not completely, for example, Senate Bill 6 wanted large load customers like data centers to pay $100,000 per megawatt in order to connect to the grid. Now, SB 6 also is not set yet, right? It's still in rulemaking, so instead of charging them $100,000 per megawatt hour, that has essentially been cut in half, right? And I don't know the exact number, but that's been cut in half. We still don't know how much costs will be borne by the large load user compared to the average ratepayer like all of us, because it's more than just connecting to the grid. It also there's also transmission costs that go involved into interconnecting, and we all pay for that transmission. When transmission lines are having to be built, we pay for that. So right now, as it is in rulemaking, we don't know the entire impact the bill is going to have, but we certainly want the large load user to pay for all of their connection.
Can they also pick up with support from the people? is there an opportunity to pick up more of that cost? Not just the infrastructure cost, but instead of passing it on to the, to the public, if we're talking, that's incentivizing these big, 75 megawatt and higher companies to help everybody in this room.
Sure. And transmission, we need transmission not just for large load users, right? We need transmission built out for all of our use. But I'm sorry, I was going to say something else and I forgot your question.
How can we put pressure? So SB6 is not going to come to the floor until 2027.
Yeah, it's still in rulemaking right now. Right.
And so the next legislative session is 2027, and that's when we'll see the effect. And I guess the question for the panel as well, and Dee Dee, how do we keep the big money, right? The Meta, Google, all of that, the massive amounts of money from changing this so that we get stuck with their bill, which seems as like that happens time and time and time again.
Sure. I think that's definitely a question for the politicians because, for example, the $100,000 per megawatt hour that these big tech users, which they're big tech companies, got cut in half or however much it is based on because of their very powerful lobbying efforts. So I think that is really a question for politicians.
All right, so everyone, we all need to show up at Eddie V's on 5th Street in Austin during the legislative session and, grab a martini and sit down with a politician and ask them.
There is also, DCAT has QR codes posted around the venue, which can help with initiating a conversation with your state legislator.
So I think one of the problems at our state legislature is that they're not all experts on all the things. And so we don't need to wait until the next session. We need to be getting appointments now with our legislators, Senate, House Rep, especially like committee leads. So we can begin that work now. We don't need to wait till 2027. And the more, if each one of us tried to meet with them weekly, and for the next 52 weeks, we were, someone was in their office, that would hit home the fact that they cannot be bought out of this conversation. So I would just encourage everyone to, if you're interested in going to talk to a legislator, do it sooner rather than later. We don't need to wait. We can tell them that we expect SB6 to be strong and protective for Texans and not get so watered down that it's inefficient in the long run.
I want to say one quick thing on that too is when we strengthen it, we need to strengthen it in such a way. I mean, my concern with SB6 is it's going to make it so that only Google and Meta and those guys are in the conversation at the end of the day when it passes. And so it needs to be very strong, and I agree with that. But we also need to make sure that we're here. We're not just talking about the big boys. We're talking about all these guys. In Milam County, they have an enormous problem with Bitcoin mining, and we're starting to see it here, where they just go out and buy 10 acres in the country, hook up to the grid, and Bitcoin mine. And there is zero we can do to stop that at all, because they're sure not going to ask for a tax abatement or a development agreement or anything. They just show up and start doing it. And then there's a loophole in the legislation that allows them to get paid when the power goes off, and they literally make more money when the power's off than they do when the power's on. And so that, when you're talking to your legislators, bring up that loophole and ask them to close it, please.
As we continue to move forward, bringing it back to the room for a second, just wanting to potentially kick off our Q&A session with a little measure of the temperature here in seeing by a raise of hands. How many people here have, sent a text message or checked your email or maybe used GPS to get here today? Paid a bill online recently? Used your phone to look at those photos from back during the pandemic, when we were all nested inside our homes. There's a legitimate distinction to make here between data centers specific to AI and data centers that are used for a plethora of other uses, including all of those things just mentioned. So we certainly want to keep that in mind as well as we continue the conversation. Every one of those actions runs through physical infrastructure, which could be part of what is incorporated within our community in the future. So, understood, but there's much potential for.
Can we say something?
Yes, absolutely.
So, we already all do that, right? All your phones already do that with the existing data center capacity. This is not what we're talking about with these data centers coming in, which is envisioning a AI-centered future that I don't think all of us have signed up for. I don't think all of us have signed up to be monitored 100% of the time, to have our lives controlled by technology. And yes, there's a lot of individual responsibility in that we all have to take accountability for. If you have 1,000 photos on your phone, you are causing data usage. And yes, you should consider scaling that back. If you're doing work, if you're doing research, and you're using AI, you should consider scaling that back. But we're talking about a system that's coming to us in the future beyond where we are at today. And we're talking about using Texas as the epicenter for that future. Texas water as the epicenter for that future, and that's not something that we have to sign up for.
Just a quick side note on that point. So, the language I like to use is we have data banks, which use very, very little power. That's just like the really simple, you put a, picture in the cloud or a document in the cloud. Then there's data centers. Those AI ones use about 20 times the water and the power and the resources as a basic data bank. And folks might be asking why, what's going on, and the real distinction, and this comes straight from the mouth of Microsoft itself, is the head of Microsoft's AI division. They want to be able to automate every single white-collar job in the next 18 months. Literally, that is what they said verbatim, and that's why they have to have these massive, massive data centers. The one out in Amarillo is literally 5 miles long. You could be going 80 miles down the highway and taking more than 5 minutes to pass it. So if you ever hear me say data bank, that's the small one. Those aren't necessarily bad. You can put those in a closet. A data center, that's the one that is coming to mess with us.
So I'm wondering, Clayton, with your ag experience, or Virginia, Dee Dee, with water, where is the conversation about, large desalination plants, for example, just so we wouldn't have to use, it could be a combination of the wastewater you were talking about, or desalination plants that could be focused on the data centers, which, everyone here probably has used ChatGPT, to fix a tire or to change something. Never? No. All right.
My dad told me too, that 20 years ago.
Well, not to change a tire. That was wrong. Not in this room. But more and more people, like for research, it is a competitive world out there, and every corporation is, it's a basket of fries, it's all robotic. Everything is turning to that. And there's no way that we can stop that technology. Well, all right, understood. But in reality, there's a reality check here, people. And I'm asking, in the situation where it cannot be stopped, right, then is desalinization viable? And if not, why not?
First desal, and then talk about how inevitable automation actually is. So let's first talk about desal. With current technology we have today, if we went full desal, the Gulf of Mexico is dead. No more shrimp, no more fish, the Gulf of Mexico is dead. Full stop. Now, there are two technologies that, knock on wood, if they actually work and they're scalable, could resolve this issue. One, Abilene Christian University is working on a new type of system that could make desalinization extraordinarily cheap. Like pennies on the dollar type of cheap. So that solves one issue, but also desalinization incredibly expensive. The other issue is there's a company that has reportedly is figuring out how to turn the brine, that leftover salt that would kill the Gulf of Mexico, into fertilizer. So if those two technologies are scalable, if those two technologies actually work, that could resolve the issue of desalinization. Verdict's still out, but that's possible. And then again, when it comes is automation inevitable, I would like to add the point of, well, it depends on who's controlling the automation. Because let's be very real here. If automation was controlled by local communities, was controlled by us, the people, we could do it where it does work okay. This isn't about being anti-AI, it's against being sheep for slaughter. But right now, the folks controlling AI is 3 tech barons. The 3 same people who own half the wealth of our country right now. Good way to imagine what it means when I say 3 people own half the wealth of our country. Imagine your piggy bank. Imagine you are the perfectly average American. Half of your piggy bank is gone because they took it. So it depends on who controls the automation. If we can control it and manage it and roll it out slowly, cautiously, and carefully, we could do it where it improves everyone's lives. Or, the jobs of all of our kids in my generation get automated away, and that will not be pretty if that happens.
Y'all said a bad word, desal. I'm going to go into that. Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay, I'm going to talk about desal and why it just infuriates me. So there are 2 kinds of desal. There's what we hear about all the time, desal at the coast, and then there's desal underneath the ground. I was on a Zoom call with Sid Miller maybe last year, and he wanted a desal near Fentress because Caldwell County has a water shortage. And my eyes could not stop rolling into the back of my head because when you take away the water underneath the ground in a clay area, the land literally sinks. It happened in California, which is why you've got water wells sticking 6 feet up out of the ground. So when we hear desal inland, that is extremely bad for infrastructure. Think what that does to roads and the whole area. Okay, so that's desal inland. Then we talk about desal at the coast. When we remove the brackish water that has a lower salt content, because they're not going to desal deep in the ocean because the salt content's higher. So they're taking away extremely important brackish water in the bays and estuaries that so many species depend on. So when we remove that brackish water for potable use, we are harming the bays and estuaries. So when Clayton says that Gulf of Mexico is dead, he's not kidding. And we have a much more sustainable solution in every town in this state, and that is wastewater reuse for things like concrete batch plants and data centers if and when they come. So we need to really shift the mindset, especially in the wake of the fact that Proposition 4 just passed, and it's going to put a lot of money into solving Texas's water problems. And I would just argue desal is not the answer. It's an expensive proposition and it's not sustainable. So I just wanted to air my grievances. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we're going to transition into our public Q&A session. The way this is going to work is we're going to set up a mic here in this central aisle. So you can start forming a line if you want to ask a question. And then when you're done with your question, you can filter off to either side to get back to your seats. We ask that during this Q&A session that you please keep your questions concise and in question form. We're going to keep things respectful and focused on the issues, and we're going to do our very best to get to as many questions as possible. So thank you so much for your patience and participation.
Can you hear me? All right, can everyone hear me? All right, my name is Vincent Rosso. I got a chance to speak to Mr. Hayden, Judge Hayden, before we started. So my question is regarding something you mentioned about charging them, the data centers, if they take more than the allotted amount of water. And with the deep pockets that we are dealing with, that doesn't seem like a sustainable solution. They won't care. And so my question is regarding, can we make them recharge the water over so much that they are taking back into our aquifer?
So the water that they use, they add glycol to the system. I definitely don't think we want to put that back into our aquifer.
Well, they wouldn't have to put that water back. Coming from another state where the Zephyrhills Water Company had to take water out over and above what was assumed, they had to add water back in there before they could take more.
And that's fine. We don't have, the county doesn't have the authority to hold it to that.
I would just make sure.
So that's something, if we want to see that happen, it needs to get some sort of legislative agenda. We can try putting it in our bill for water. What I was talking about on callbacks are the callbacks in our agreement. If we give them an abatement and a pilot payment back and they fail to comply, then we claw those back. And so you're right, they're billion-dollar companies, but that's all we got.
I understand. Thank you. And who would I talk to about such a clawback as far as them recharging water? Who is the person that would be responsible
Your
for?
state representative is Stan Curtis, and your state senator and senators have to be.
Thank you.
Can I address that real fast for the overpumping? So we're dealing with overpumping quite a bit right now. We've been in a mega drought for several years, and we have companies that are subject to curtailment that are not abiding by it. And they end up paying the fines because it's just a cost of doing business. When you can make more than what the money that gives back to you, or that's fined to you, by using the water, you're just going to keep using it. And that's part of the problem with relying on these paper agreements is they don't really have a lot of substance. We just saw, and I'm not going to pick on the Caldwell one, I'm going to pick on the Guadalupe one because I'm really upset with that happened last week by approving it. They put in their agreement that they're going to use 2,500 gallons per day as if that was all the water that they were going to use. Really, there were two provisions in there. There was one provision that said, oh, if we expect to use more, we'll let you know. And then the other provision didn't address any of the actual water that they were using for cooling, because they said they were just going to figure it out later and maybe truck the water in. And then they also didn't address the power plant usage water as well. So don't necessarily believe the numbers that you're hearing. That's why it's so important to get that information from through public information requests. That's why I'm raising it, because what we're hearing out in the public and what the decisions that our elected officials are making are based on assumptions that aren't necessarily 100% accurate.
I'm Amy Polito. I am the CEO of Red River Infrastructure. I'm here to support the data center industry and to explain some of the reasons. I know you wanted civil discourse, but you have no data center folks on the panel. So there are lots of reasons why the data center industry does what it does. And a lot of these points in this brochure are inaccurate as of today. The industry is changing tremendously. I know. My question truly is that if there was a net zero data center, because that's what's happening, that's where the industry is moving to, they're going to be water positive, they're going to capture their carbon on their power generation. Is that okay with you?
What is water positive?
We are gonna give back more water than we take.
Okay, guys, so hey folks, we're not here, we didn't come to the town hall echo chamber, and this is important information that, everyone has the right to ask a question, and let's be respectful, because if we talk over each other, no one is going to learn anything. I learned about desal just now, all right, and there was a bunch of, desal. I didn't know. That's why we're here asking questions, so thank you for your question.
I'm not one of the folks that think that data centers and this massive build out are inevitable. When I see people like this, 200 plus people out here saying, no, we don't want it, I know eventually that can happen, right? We want to hear from industry that you're going to be better actors, right? We do, well, not just from data centers, from any industry, but let's just point out Microsoft, for example. Microsoft had made a commitment to use clean energy by 2030. They've already abandoned that commitment. So when industry says, we're going to do better, we're going to be net positive, I don't see how that can happen when one of the largest big tech companies in the world are not staying to their commitment.
The noise. Okay, this is not going to work for me now. So let's talk a little bit about the noise issue and how this is affecting lifestyle. So even if we had a data center that was still water free, that's the place for, and we had a data center that, honest to God, had a no power source, caused no power inflation. The noise from the data centers is very, very troubling. We've seen reports, and I've talked to farmers in other states and in Texas, where within 5 miles you can hear the noise. And this isn't your average noise. This is a very low frequency. A lot of it we can't hear, but our livestock can. I've talked to farmers whose cattle now only have stillbirths. I've talked to chicken folks whose chickens lay 50% less eggs now. And we are seeing this with horses, we are seeing this with donkeys, we are even seeing reports that these sounds are affecting people. I read a study this literally yesterday that nausea and heart attacks and everything else is correlating with both Bitcoin mines and data centers within a 5 mile radius. Some of these things also create heat domes where the heat can be as much as 20 degrees higher within 5 miles. Is Texas hot? Yeah. So there's still some other major concerns. And again, this isn't about being anti-economic development. It's honestly not. We all know we need more economic development, particularly in rural areas. We just cannot allow ourselves or Texas to be a sheep for slaughter for this.
Caldwell DCAT is going to introduce something. So, Angie, yeah.
My name is Angie. I'm with Caldwell Data Center Action Team, and we are fortunate enough to have a gentleman here who has worked for data centers for years and knows exactly how the water is used and how closed loop systems are not the answer. So I'd love for him to share a little bit of his knowledge so everybody understands how the water is being used. Oh, sorry, his name is Rick Ashcraft. Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft, if you would, when you're talking about water usage versus water consumption, can you point that out? And also, where the numbers are coming from, either evaporative systems, closed loop systems, et cetera. All right, thanks.
All right, my name is Rick Ashcraft. I have a PhD in chemistry from Rice University. I'm sorry. Rick Ashcraft, a PhD in chemistry from Rice University. I've worked in water treatment for 40 years, and during those years I've worked in refineries, power generation, Yeah, I do. I want you to hear me too. Is it better? Yeah. All right, I'll start over. Rick Ashcraft, PhD in chemistry from Rice University, 40 years in the water treatment industry, and I have worked in refineries, data centers, and power generation facilities. I'm a know-it-all, but I do know about water. And I know how much water is used in data centers. The data centers are not telling you the whole story. They'll tell you they have a closed loop. The heat from those processors, and you've got thousands of little electric heaters in a building 5 football fields big that are generating heat. That heat has to go somewhere. They used a chilled water loop. That chilled water cools the processors to about 75 degrees, where they like to be. The heat from those processors goes into the chilled water. The chilled water is made by huge chillers about the size of a school bus. And there are probably going to be about 20 to 30 of those in a data center, a single building of a data center. Those chillers have to be cooled because they compress the Freon, and it's really not that complicated. But there is an enormous amount of water that's needed for a closed loop. So when the data center representatives say they have a closed loop, that's half of the question. They use an enormous amount of water to remove that heat from the data centers themselves. So data center proposed, some of the ones that are proposed, I know the one that was proposed in Guadalupe County would use about 2 million gallons per day of water. Now, they'll also say they have power generation, self-sustained power generation. I've worked at power plants. The way they work, they're a big jet engine powered by natural gas. And so you've got a jet engine running a generator. Okay, that's straightforward. You also know that there's a huge amount of heat going out the end of those jet engines. You can't let that heat just go anywhere. It's too valuable. So you make steam. The steam drives another generator. The problem is to convert that steam to water so that you can pump it back into the heat system, you have to have cooling towers. Just like with the data centers and the chilled water systems, you use just about as much for the heat recovery steam generators, the jet engines. Now I'll make this quick. I looked it up, I figured out how much water Caldwell County uses per day, 10 million. This data center is going to use 5. And that should make you really wonder. We do not have that water.
My name is Jenna Madrigal, and I'm a concerned citizen. I have a question about the statement saying that we can't stop them from coming versus the statement of postponing them is stopping them. Can you explain to me why they are guaranteed a tax evasion? I feel like if they aren't guaranteed that, then that's a big reason to not come here. And also, what is the amount of money that we are saving in getting a tax evasion?
So, first of all, we don't have to. As a matter of fact, the biggest square on that map right there has got no abatements from Caldwell County. And they are still here, and they're still moving forward. So this idea that if you don't abate them, they won't come here is just not true. They are here, and they have no abatements. And we have a very weak development agreement with that group, not nearly as strong as the agreements that we have with those that we did get abatements. Second part of your question, we abate 100% of the taxes and get 50% back through a pilot payment.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sahar. I'm really bad at public speaking, so bear with me. Only one woman on this whole thing had mentioned the word health, and it's this woman on the end, and no one else brought that up. And I was wondering, isn't that just as important as water, especially since we can look at all our neighbors and all the other states where it's been proven that children and elderly have had an increasing rate of respiratory disease, cardiovascular diseases, and an elevated cancer risk. Don't you think that poisoning all of us is just as important as water is itself?
So firstly, thank you for bringing that up. So that's absolutely true. There's some more research coming out in New Jersey showing that kids under 10 are having increased heart murmurs from these data centers. It's that noise and pollution. The NAACP and a couple other folks have just sued XAI, Elon Musk, out in Memphis, Tennessee, because they built a data center there. They put on a bunch of methane generators. It's causing a new cancer alley. I know Oregon is now studying how this has affected cancer rates, so we'll have some more information there. I've also seen some reports that this could cause early onset dementia for folks over 65. It destroys property values. It just really messes things up. And even if, and I want to preface this, because a lot of this is brand new information. Like there's very few truly academic studies. There's a couple, but there's not that many. You know, we don't throw someone in jail if we have any reasonable doubt that they're guilty. We should not be building these things if we have any reasonable doubt they're going to affect our health. So, I have reasonable doubt. And someone tells me a lot of y'all do too. So, again, thank you for talking about the health fund.
So I want to raise from that question another legislative change that's needed. So right now, those backup generators that are required for these data centers can get a permit by rule. That essentially means that they submit an application and they get an instant approval. We saw that with the Cloudburst facility where they had 2 backup generators proposed. They combined them into one permit, and we had to do a motion to overturn to get the permit limits set right under that permit by rule. Permit by rule means we don't have any say in the permit process like you would typically have with the contested case hearing process with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We need that legislative change so that way people can respond to these backup generators, these diesel generators, these coal plants that are being proposed with these factories, these data centers, so they have a voice in the air quality around their homes that are immediately impacting them. So talk to your legislator about that. And then the other thing I want to mention on what we just did with the San Marcos City Council, if anybody's living in a home rule city and that has zoning authority, the City Council just voted to amend the code to require that these backup generators be a conditional use permit. That adds another step where the community can respond to it and have a say in the public hearing process.
Yes, I'd like to address that too. Of course we care about health. As a matter of fact, on this panel, I'm the only one that's going to spend the night here in Caldwell County. I live here, I'm a rancher here, I have livestock here. The water that anybody in Lockhart, Texas drinks comes right out from underneath my ranch. And I didn't get the opportunity to talk about water rights with that group at all. It ended at my fence line, like somehow the aquifer knows that not to go outside of that water use agreement. But I'm telling you, I'm living it every day. I can sit on my back porch and see the water treatment plant and the well field that supplies water to Lockhart through a 38-inch pipe in Butte and Kyle, all day, every day, 24/7. So we definitely care about health.
So just to add to that, something that I'm really concerned about is we don't know what chemicals will be in the closed loop system or on site. And we know TCEQ just gave a permit for someone to dump arsenic into Lake Corpus Christi, who's about to run out of water this summer. So another change that we need is for TCEQ to have more teeth, and that is coming from the governor. So TCEQ needs to be a lot harsher when it comes to discharge permits, because what I'm afraid of is that these data centers are going to get discharge permits into our creeks and rivers, and who knows what kind of contamination that's going to bring and cause all sorts of health issues. So it's a big question mark in my mind, but the solution will be for TCEQ to have a little bit more power.
And before you put that down, what is, just a show of hands, who has been to a TCEQ hearing and was allowed to speak? Okay. How do we gain a little more, traction at the TCEQ hearings, and how do we make our voice heard at that level of government?
So I would say start before TCEQ, because again, this comes back to our state legislators. Our state legislators are the people that give TCEQ their authority. So if we have concerns that TCEQ is not doing enough to protect our natural resources, then the legislators need to give TCEQ more authority, and that comes from the state. So
put that on your list.
it's a long list, John, but it's going to take all of us, so we can do it.
And again, those the QR codes are around there, probably right on your table. Take advantage of those and let your state legislators know that you're here, and some of them weren't.
Yes.
The next.
Yes, I will put it in the form of a question.
Okay.
My name is Lindsay Eck. I'm a landowner here in Caldwell County. I'm dependent on a well, and I am retired from the TCEQ. Based on figures from AI industry critic Ed Zitron and T.D. Cowan, among other people, and based on the experience at Stargate Abilene, this facility, which is estimated by the Austin Business Journal to be 4.7 square miles, where the city of Luling is 5.5 square miles, and an estimated power consumption of 4 gigawatts, would be expected to cost $176 billion to build, almost all of that going back to chip manufacturers in the Bay Area. And there are some other preposterous statistics here. I won't make a statement, but I'm going to ask the question is, when this inevitably fails, as the AI bubble pops, because companies like Oracle have not shown any way to make a profit off of selling the data from these data centers, when the whole thing collapses, what happens to the site?
I'm sure that's a question for me. So I do not know, sir. That's the honest answer.
Thank you.
The answer says I have no way. I said I don't know. How do I predict the future, and how do I tell if and when that bubble pops, what happens? I mean, I'm hearing, things like Elon Musk is going to put data centers on the moon. But when? So I don't know the answer to that question. That is honest answer as I don't know how to give you.
I'm Taylor Redmond. I live here in Lockhart, Texas. My question is, can you be checking on if data centers are following the county's regulations from their amendments and not straying from the agreement? How will this be handled since the federal government isn't really regulating them, and CCQ doesn't have super strict regulations, and especially in the case of Tract where they're like building the facility and then probably selling it out to other people.
So, Tract is a great example of why we need development agreements that are solid and strong. What was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
So how that will be regulated if
Yes.
they are breaking the agreement?
So we have it in our agreement that we can see their water consumption. We will know if they break it. Now, as somebody pointed out, the only ability to penalize them that we have is to claw back the abatement itself in that money. And we're talking about billion-dollar companies here. So I don't know, if they go over, we're going to claw back. That's what we have in our agreement. If they go over every month, we're going to claw back every month. But that's our own. It's not even statutory. We have to give it to a development agreement to get that one.
And how does that work with Tract when they're selling to others?
So Tract does not ask for an abatement, and we're looking at their drainage agreements and all the things that we statutorily can do. But we don't have a real strong development agreement with them, and we also have an abatement.
So, and that development agreement copy can then come into being when Tract sells to a data center? Is that?
So yeah, there's two ways that we're seeing these done. The first way is like Prime, for example, where they come in, they develop the land, and they actually build the data center and then lease space to users. That's one way. Tract's model is to develop the site and sell the land to the user who comes in and builds the data center themselves. And we're hopeful that they're going to come to us and want it. Yeah. We're hopeful that at that time, whoever the user is will show up wanting abatements so that we can get to a development agreement. In the interim, we're doing the legislation that I talked about, trying to get at least some authority over water usage and some of the things that they do. So we're working on it as hard as we can, but we just have so much ability, and I know that's not what people want to hear, but that's the truth.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the clawback and whether that it can be considered a cost of doing business by these companies that have a lot of money, or is it punitive to really keep them,
Well, I mean, if we do, let's say they generate $24 million worth of taxes, and they're sending half of it back to us, and they use twice as much water as they agreed to use, we're going to claw back all of their abatement. Now, is $24 million a month important to $1 billion data center? I don't know. Yeah, but that is the parameter. I'd say probably not. But we were doing what we can do.
Oh, hey, one more question. Can we talk about NDAs? Because it seems as though, there's a lot of mistrust when counties or cities or whoever, any governmental entity is signing an NDA with a data center group coming in. How can the governmental entities just say, no way, we're not signing an NDA, we're here making decisions for the people, we are the people, this is representative government, and we're not doing it. What are the effects of saying that to these folks?
So I just want to quickly address one thing that the Ag Commissioner can do. We can issue what's called agricultural impact studies. It's kind of like an environmental study in a way, and it has the power that hasn't been used in. Can y'all hear me a little bit better now? No? Maybe? There we go. Big tech knows we're talking, so they're messing with their mics. So the Ag Commissioner has the power that used in a good long while. It's called agricultural impact studies. Think of it as an environmental study. We will be aggressively issuing them on day one, where basically it forces them to be transparent. It forces them to be honest. Maybe that could help a little bit with NDAs. At least, in my new opinion, these NDAs should be illegal. I wouldn't have the power to rule them illegal, but if I could, I would. So we will be doing that just to try to force these folks to be fully honest and to be fully transparent, particularly as that other gentleman mentioned, that they're just not being transparent.
I'm just going to add one sentence onto that. Every public information attorney that I know advises their elected officials not to sign NDAs.
Yeah, why?
Because it's public information. Yeah. So, I mean, you have a right to public information. If they're signing an agreement to restrict that as public information, it may not be legal. And so there are government officials that do sign those things. There's rumors that they sign them and they end up not signing them too, so just be careful about what you hear. But NDAs are generally not advisable. Not advisable.
First of all, you'll have a hard time finding any of our signatures on an NDA. They do come in there and ask us not to disclose. If we don't agree not to disclose, they say, we're going to bill it anyway and see you later. So that's what we're up against. So I don't know what to say. We go into executive session, we have conversations with those folks in an effort to negotiate these deals. And as soon as we can negotiate them, 312 agreements, by the way, are posted for a public hearing 30 days prior to adoption. So, and you're all invited to come weigh in on those agreements anytime. We post them in the paper, we post them on Facebook, we post them everywhere we can post them. And so, and that is what it's for. It's to give you an opportunity to come in and weigh in on that agreement when we do get into it. But in the absence of doing that, we won't get any of these development agreements done. And if they want to come, they're going to come. They've all bought the land without a development agreement or a tax payment.
And I guess that is one other thing to put on the list to your state legislators about NDAs and not supporting NDAs regarding public information. That affects every single person in this room.
Hey, thanks everyone on the panel. I have a question specifically for Clayton, talking about the timeline question strategically. Like, is there a way of, slowing and stopping? So I'm gonna ask you about that and just putting it in context, like locally, there was a tax abatement in Caldwell that actually told them to speed up construction, and they had to start construction by April 15th. This is at least what was promoted in the media, so maybe that's wrong in the media.
What's the question?
And then on the other hand, there's this idea of going to the legislature and waiting until next year and voting or whatever, getting martinis, I guess. And so I guess I'm wondering, can you give some sense of what it looks like actually now to do something?
Fantastic question. So the real solution is going to have to come from eventually this full state and the full federal government. Full bar, they're the ones who are going to have to really put some heavy regulations, some heavy safety standards, and preferably just a full moratorium until we know more of the details. I would prefer a moratorium, to be honest. Let's talk locally, because right now the federal government and our state government is not going to do that. You're talking at least 200, 300 million of dark money flooding the system. Both Texas, all the other states, a lot of the Congress folks as well. Which is why you don't hear too many of them honestly talking about it. So right now, until we can have a change of Congress, until we can kind of really put the pressure, we have to act locally, because right now, locally, we can stop them very slow, and immediately, or delay them. I have talked to folks who are working to delay theirs by stopping some of those big power lines. Because they have to have those power lines, you stop the power lines, you stop them. Imagine a data center as a car, right? You know, if you move the transmission, that car ain't going anywhere. The data center is the same thing. Even if we can stop one single component of it, we can stop the whole system, right? So some folks are going after electricity, some folks are using water, some folks are using rezoning. There is someone out in, I don't remember what state, I just learned about this, so if I fudge any of the details, please forgive me. But there was a rule passed by the administration using the Defense Production Act saying that any major infrastructure built in the United States cannot use Chinese equipment. They can't use Chinese computer chips or anything else. One of the data centers was, and they stopped that data center because once they forced the data center to admit that some of its supply chain came from China, it just stopped it right there. So who knows, maybe these data centers are actually legal by that standard as well. So I should also preface, this wasn't in my introduction, I actually work a lot in supply chains, particularly globally. I usually fight corporations who try to find loopholes in the system, and they're unfortunately very good at finding loopholes. So that's what we do locally first to delay these things. The bubble will eventually burst, maybe later this year, maybe next, hopefully sooner than later. Then, sooner it bursts, the sooner it stops. Then after that, we're going to really look, the only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. So actions like this is organized people. This is how we beat the money interest. And we've done this before. Do we get closing remarks? Or?
Well, we're getting close to 3 o'clock. We've got several more questions which we'd like to address.
Let me just do this one quick story. I will do a super summary. Okay, yeah, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claudia with Indivisible Lockhart, and my question is actually going to be for the people. We foresee this starting to happen, so we are going to have meetings starting every week on Tuesday. Will you join us? Will you come? We can organize, we can do this, because the voice of the people is the most important voice there is, and we come together, so my only question is, will you join us? Tuesday.
I feel like Alex Trebek, you got to put it in the form of a question. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're bad at numbers, right? And 4 gigawatts, this one data center, is more than I think it's like 3 times the city of Boston. I think that in 2022, that's more gigawatts than the entire state of Virginia, which was of data centers. This is massive amounts of data centers, and it requires a lot of power. And there was a brief mention about the health impacts in another question, but I'm really curious, where are they getting this power from? What do these diesel generators look like? What are the health impacts? What does this mean for our air quality? So thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, am I talking loud enough? These data centers require power 24/7, right? They cannot go without power. So I'm not going to say they all, but I'm assuming all of them will have these diesel backup generators, or they're also going to have gas backup generators. These diesel generators are about the size of a train car. And a typical building can have 20, 30, 40 of these diesel generators that will operate when there's an emergency. If ERCOT says, hey, we're facing some grid stress, so we need you to scale back your power and turn on that backup generation. Diesel power emits pollution of nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide. All of these emissions have terrible impacts on our health. Anybody with respiratory illnesses are really vulnerable to this type of pollution. Just the day-to-day operations, keeping them running, has impacts on our environment and definitely on our health.
Thank you. Next question.
If starting today everything went their way, then being the data centers, what kind of timeline are we looking from today, everything's perfect for them, to fully operational?
Can we close the doors, or there's a lot of
exact answer for you, but I will say that I think some of these landowners are prospecting, and so I'm hoping that even though there are 4 on this map and 5 on the Guadalupe and Hayes counties map, that some of them just are never gonna happen. But I think Cloudburst allegedly is ready to build today. So it just depends on the landowner and if the developer has a data center ready to come in. I think Track is backed by Bloomberg. So if they have those data centers lined up ready to come in and ERCOT has given them the approval, because that's the thing, like, can y'all give a development agreement if ERCOT has not given permission?
So we negotiate these development agreements before they ever exist. So if ERCOT doesn't give them permission, there will be no data center because they have no power. If ERCOT doesn't give a development center power, their only choice is to generate their own power. So they will come in, and that's why they're lining up. If you look at that map, and then look at the Kinder Morgan pipeline that runs through this county, that also went through my ranch, and you'll find that the data centers are lining up along that, longer near that pipeline, and there's a reason for that, and they need the gas to generate their own power. So to kind of answer your question, I'm a general contractor also, and if you're gonna do a project that size, say prime, and build 4 of those buildings from the ground up, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 years to get one built.
But all of them would not happen at once because ERCOT has not granted permission to all of them. And not all of them are willing to build their own power.
So, and that leads to an interesting question of SB 6, which is if one of these things is built, are they grandfathered to pre-SB 6? Does anyone know the answer to that? Bobby, maybe? Well, before it is in effect.
I don't think so. I think if they squeak in before SB 6 passes, then
They're subject to it?
Then they're not subject to it.
Not subject to it.
Is that not true? What, do you want to tell us, Amy? Also, Amy, I've got a comment for you. I think it was very brave of you to speak, and I guess I would say I would hope the data centers would come after they have all of the technology that you're hoping for.
They already have it. Sorry, they already have it. So anybody who is not connected to the power today, depending on where you are in the SB6, but I will tell you 80 to 90% of data center developments that are going forward are going to build their own power. First of all, because Trump asked them to. Secondly, because ERCOT can't get us power within 10 years. So you're going to build your own power. Third, the water usage, all they're talking about AI, that's all wrong. You don't use water if it's an AI data center. Reason why is because you can't. Those servers get so hot you have to use closed loop cooling. And the gentleman that came over to talk to the way they're doing the cooling designs now do not use water. They do waste heat recovery. They do a lot of different things. They kick back more water than they use. So SB6 will not allow us, well, it's not feasible. You're not going to want to wait around for 10 years for LCRA to give you power, even though I'm in the queue. I'm in the queue, but anybody who's else in the queue, there's even people making kayak payments to ERCOT that haven't gotten their power studies done because they're in cluster 0. So if you do not have power sitting today and you're a large load, you're still waiting for SB6 to kind of figure itself out. So there's moving on. They're just going to go build their own power. So, and by the way, fuel cells don't use water. Recip engines do not use water. And that's most of what the power generation that we are building today is built on.
Yeah,
so.
fuel cells depends on what type and have ordered that because it's going to be years.
No, it's not. Actually, I can get fuel cells in 9 months.
Shown us that you can.
My
company.
Okay, folks, hey, we were only allowed to use this space until 3 o'clock, but they've generously allowed us to continue going considering the amount of people who would still like to ask questions. So we're going to keep working through the questions, but we do want to ask those who are not necessarily involved in the discussion, please keep your voices down. It's getting tougher and tougher to hear questions and responses. Additionally, people out on the porch, if you could please keep your voices down, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me? My name is Elizabeth Clens. I'm the Democratic candidate for State House in District 17. And I've been reading quite a bit on the electric and water issues related to data centers, but mine is specifically for the local disruption. And I think for all the panelists, but especially for the judge, I think, could you address the concern of how these property, the situation you described, for example, in Milam County, where someone comes and just buys a plot of land and sets up a data center, and then it has all the local disruptive effects in terms of the noise, the health effects, the sound. What would you like as a county judge legislatively to happen to give you some power to combat those problems?
So I'll give you a perfect example, sound. And I'm looking at Alicia, and Alicia and I have been friends and knocked heads for probably 10, 15 years now. For years in her neck of the woods in this county, music blasted. I mean, very loud music, day and night, all day long. We went to the legislature and the state law said at 85 decibels. 85 decibels is incredibly loud. I mean, it is incredibly loud. And it's 85 decibels not where they're sitting, but at the fence line. We asked for the counties to have the simple authority to set our own decibel level, and we didn't even get out of calendars. So we need some help from you, if you get elected, to get our bills that we try to push through out of calendars, onto the floors of both houses, and help us push them through. I'm so frustrated. You can hear it in my voice, I'm certain. But for 6 legislative sessions, I have gone up there and pushed bills and fought bills and to no avail. If we get to committee, the hearings always get pushed out all day long. We get to hear them late. And you know, I'm looking at Senator Zaffarini's person here. I'll be honest with you, she's been a great advocate for us. And so it is incredibly frustrating. And when I say the state legislature, I'm not saying everybody there is bad. What I am saying is it is hard enough to get a bill passed without our representatives and our senators going through the process with us. And so often on especially what I would consider bad bills, there's been some development bills like just remove yourself from the ETJ if the city doesn't handle it, which is exactly what happened with this data center at the very north end of the county. There was a big town hall. Everybody showed up just like this one. The developer just said, well, we're in the ETJ, we'll just remove ourselves from the ETJ and now we don't have to deal with the city. That law is the worst law that has been passed in this state in a long, long time. It turned counties into the wild, wild west. There's not squat we can do about it when they do that, and it's infuriating. And that if you could do one thing and get that law turned around, you'd be a hero, the hero of every local official in this state.
Thank you. With respect to our panelists, obligations. We have a hard stop at 3:20, so that gives us about 11 minutes. So let's keep it concise, please.
My name's Alicia Thornton, and my question is, and it seems to be the elephant in the room here, we talk about legislation, and this is political. We talk about legislation and wait until 2027 for the legislative session. But it seems to me there's one person that's making this all possible, and that is a person that has given $40 billion worth of tax incentives to these data centers, and that's Governor Abbott. And I don't care whether you're Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. We need to have a governor who's going to listen to the people. And so the pressure to me seems to be everybody needs to get together and try to put pressure on him. It's an election year, and this is the time, this is where our power lies to do something. Because he is not doing anything for anybody. Republicans, Democrats, it doesn't matter.
Appreciate that, ma'am. Your question, please?
Well, my question is, so isn't it the most likely thing that, we should be doing, we're talking about a lot of good information here, but putting pressure where pressure deserves to be put?
I'll answer that.
Gearing ourselves towards going after him.
Yes, in an election year, I do think they do things that are uncharacteristic, and so pressure on him right now might get us change sooner than waiting till 2027. Great idea.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks that agree with you, and we can socially have those conversations. Next question, please.
Yes, my name is Joyce Hayes. I'm a resident in Lockhart. You're all talking about delays and delays. Are we stuck with 2 of these things, or are we going to be stuck with all 5 of them?
You could be stuck with all 5 of them if they figure out their power.
Because we can't do it. We can complain and everything.
Well, we're not complaining, we're doing what we can.
Yeah, because the state of Texas is bringing them in.
But to get more local authority, and to your point, there's a big difference between local authority and state authority. And so when you say local authority, I feel like you're talking to me, and I can't. I'm statute bound.
Yes, you can't do anything.
So well, we can, but it's limited, and so that's why we're starting now. So I'm not waiting until January to start putting the bill together. I'm doing it now.
But we're going to be stuck with 5, sure.
But not for sure, but we could be.
Thank you.
Howdy. So first off, nobody slashed my tires. I sell AI for a living. Okay? I'm a Lockhart County resident that worked for the evil empire, Oracle, and now work for a European one. In Europe, they have better regulation. The data center that my company uses, I do.
Yes, sir. We've just got
my question is, the next time we negotiate, we talk about tax abatements, do we have the power to put in mandatory reporting on power usage, water usage, carbon emissions, and waste heat utilization? The data center that my company has those regulations today. And it seems fair that we should be able to put these in when we talk about tax abatements. Because I don't think data centers are going anywhere. And if I look at the future, AI is very bright.
Next question, please. Oh, I don't know if I heard a question.
So I think the counties can ask. I think that they can ask for that to be added into their development agreements. They could add that to their tax abatement agreements. I would ask the counties to ask for that up front, so that way that information is disclosed before you even are negotiating that development agreement, and make the information public.
Bobby Clayton, maybe y'all could, I want the public to know, you explain the sales tax exemption, the 6.25, that data centers do not have to pay on anything in the building. And then for the judge, I have a question. I don't know how many of the abatements you've given, but I'll just say this. Cloudburst in their meeting in Guadalupe said, if you don't give us these abatements, we can't proceed. So I'm just letting you know that that would be something that you might consider. And I understand your position, you know, it's a horrible position, but I just urge you, let's call their bluff on a few of them and say no, because Hayes County did that. So, you know, and then Bobby or Clayton, if y'all could answer that.
I'll answer that part. So if we refuse to negotiate, which is what you're suggesting, and they do proceed, they're not going to come back to the table. And I've never heard a developer in my life say that's asking for abatement. They all say, if you don't give me the abatement, we can't do our project. We've got a developer doing a big home development here right now that's been in my office every week for the last 3 weeks telling me, if you don't do this 30% TERS, Judge Hayden, we're going to take our toys and go home. And we have told them we don't believe that's going to pass. It's going to come to Commissioner's Court. I'm a solid no on that. I see no benefit to the people in the county to do a TERS for a subdivision that's going to be in the city limits. None. So I suspect that if we don't do that, that guy will still come because of the money he's being backed by. If we refuse to do this and they come anyway, we've lost our chance to get all the things that I just described. So it's that we don't have to grant them though. No ma'am, I'm not. But hopefully whoever beats me or when I quit will do that. That's the fact. But if I call you're not hearing what I'm saying. If I call their bluff, they will do whatever they want. Well, we're going to try to fight them on that. We're at least doing something.
Yes, they can get a sales tax abatement of 6.2.5%. Is it 20 years? Is that right? It's 10 to 15. Okay, 10 to 15 years up to 20 years. That's just a fact. I don't know if there's much of an answer.
Not from us. Go ahead.
Given that the state of Texas has declared they want a nuclear renaissance in Texas, and given that data centers, many of them have claimed that they want to transition to nuclear power, what, if anything, can we do if they come in with one agreement for one type of power and then they want to transition to nuclear, which places us at a security risk? As a military target.
Nuclear is very expensive. It's expensive to develop. It takes time for permitting. So I don't see the feasibility of nuclear here in Texas. Also, we also have to deal with the issues of waste. But I think that it would take a lot more time than them going to. They could easily get a gas plant instead of nuclear. But we do know it's very expensive, and it just takes some time to get off the ground. That's not to say that people that they're not going to try, right? I'm not saying that there are big tech businesses out there that would love to have, you know, 3 Mile Island right next to them, right? But right now it is very costly.
They're developing small modular reactors that are cheaper and faster,
right?
So it's not that costly.
Ma'am, those are regulated by the nuclear regulatory. Those small modular reactors are not regulated by the county or the state. They're regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the federal level.
Okay, folks, just want to say thank you so much to our panel. Really appreciate your time and expertise. Also, thank you to all of you. We are fully aware that this is a very complex issue. Lots of folks coming at it from different angles, different perspectives, and that's totally okay. At the start, we said there's a difference between opposing something and having the power to shape its outcome. And that's really what today has been about, understanding what's happening, where decisions are made, and where this community has influence. Obviously, we spent time talking about the various systems. They're seemingly going to be a part of our daily lives, and like any system, they come with trade-offs. So the goal isn't to pretend that those trade-offs don't exist. It's to understand them and to decide how they're managed. And maybe the most important thing we can take from this afternoon is this, that meaningful outcomes don't come from talking past each other. They come from asking better questions, understanding where the real levers are, and staying engaged in the process. These aren't easy questions for us to ask, but they're important ones. And how this community chooses to stay engaged going forward will certainly matter. Thank you all for being a part of the conversation, and I hope you thoroughly enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Thank you.